What is up, everybody? Matt Moda here to give you my favorite NFL player prop picks. We're talking the NFL Week Sunday betting slate, NFL Week 16. That's going to be the December 22nd Sunday, as if there's another one. I'm going to have a pretty big card of picks for you guys to lock in, so I'm going to try and get through this as quickly as I can. It's going to be 6 players total. That's our number, 6 players total that we're backing. 3 of which we're also taking for pretty juicy ladder climbs as well. We're not climbing a ladder like fully up to plus 10,000 odds or anything like that, but we do have some ladder climbs. Week 15, to give you a quick recap of that, was an okay week, up a little bit over a unit on the week. Not terrible, not amazing either. The season has gone pretty well for us. I'm pretty pleased with how the season has gone. Up over 28 units on the year is pretty good. Up over 19% ROI is pretty good. So if you're new to my channel, I would appreciate it if you could click that subscribe button because it's been pretty good. And let's get into these picks. So again, pretty big card of picks, so I just want to get through it. Play number 1, Cardinals versus Panthers. I'm going Trey McBride anytime touchdown. I'm only putting a half unit on that bad boy. It's plus 135 odds at DraftKings, but again, I'm putting a half unit as opposed to a full unit mixed slam. I will admit, a lot of this is based on the narrative, the fact that Trey McBride has yet to score a receiving touchdown this entire season. And the talk out of the Cardinals team is that they are desperately trying to get Trey McBride a touchdown. It's been like the talk of the entire week. Like Kyler Murray commented on social media that he's trying to get him a touchdown. McBride's close to setting a record for the most receptions on a year without a receiving touchdown, and they don't want to make that happen. Even their last game, they tried very, very hard to get Trey McBride a touchdown. It just did not quite work out that way. They gave him like a shovel pass that you typically see the Chiefs do with Travis Kelce, and McBride was tackled at like the 1-inch line. So there's been all buzz, all talk about Trey McBride and his lack of scoring. And again, Kyler commented on social media saying that he's going to get him a touchdown. So it's definitely a thing that people are talking about. Now, I wouldn't just blindly bet it based off of that. Part of the reason why I am on this play is because the Panthers are the perfect matchup if you're trying to force feed someone a touchdown. The Panthers, just an absolute abomination of a defense. It's the perfect matchup when you're trying to force feed someone a touchdown. The Panthers have the second worst defense in the NFL, according to DVOA. The third worst passing defense, the worst run defense. Just a terrible, terrible defense for the Panthers. This game screams James Conner, which we're going to get into in a little bit. It also probably screams a lot of red zone opportunities for the Cardinals, and they're probably going to force feed the ball to Trey McBride, similar to what they did last week, but hopefully with more success and also with more trying to do so. In terms of the Panthers, they're middle of the pack in terms of guarding tight ends. They're not a juicy matchup. They're not horrible. But McBride himself is incredibly involved. I mean, he's gotten double-digit targets in 4 straight games. He averages like 9 targets per game. He's honestly more of a wide receiver than he is a tight end. So I feel really good about backing him to get an anytime touchdown. I don't want to mess with yards, receptions, anything like that. I just think they try to get him into the end zone. Let's hope they do for a half unit mini slam, not a full mix slam, as my dog says hi, if you can see her. Next up, so that's play number 1. Play number 2. We're heading to the Vikings versus Seahawks game, and we're taking Jaxon Smith-Njigba, 70-plus receiving yards, plus 115 odds at bet 365. Now, I'll fully admit, this play backing a JSN, it goes against everything I believe in terms of fading recent results. Normally, I try to look for positive regression type of plays, fade recent results, which is what I like to call it. Honestly, I think this is just a bad line from the books that I'll gladly take advantage of. JSN has hit this 70-plus receiving yards number in 6 straight games. 6 straight games. In the 7th game, he missed. So, like, literally the last 6. The 7th one, he had 69. That's very nice. 69 receiving yards. So he was right there. It's the consistency is crazy when you think about it. Clearly, he's taken over as a number 1 receiver for the Seahawks as DK Metcalf has really, really fallen off. Like, he got hurt. Then they had a bye week, and he's just been terrible. Really hasn't done much. And even though JSN, he's a slot receiver for the Seahawks, he's been getting a lot more down the field, which is why his yards have been really good as opposed to what we're used to seeing like last year and the first half of this year was a lot of receptions for not a lot of yards because you would have these stupid plays. That's not the case anymore. Since week 8, which is when the ascent started for JSN, he's run the second most routes in the NFL, specifically in the slot. About 83% of his routes are in the slot. And the slot position is what you want to target against this Vikings defense. The Vikings defense is very good, but the slot position can get loose, as my friend Slop likes to say, can get loose against the Vikings. You know, we were on Keenan Allen last week against the Vikings for this exact same logic, and he came through for us. The Vikings defense, again, very, very good. But their pass funnel and they'll funnel work to the slot position. And you cannot run on the Vikings. They have the third best run defense according to DVOA, among the best run defenses when you look at basically any metric, but you can throw on him. They've allowed the most receiving yards to wide receivers in the NFL and the most receptions to wide receivers in the NFL. And since week 7, still holds true. Most receptions, most receiving yards to wide receivers. But to go even deeper than that, the matchup advantages for JSN is because he plays, like, again, almost exclusively in the slot, 83% of the time in the slot. And Vikings will allow work to go to the slot receiver. Since week 7, they've allowed a 35% target share to the slot receiver. That's the 6th highest in the NFL. And in a related note to that, they also play zone coverage at the 6th highest rate in the NFL, about 75% of the time. And JSN has the best yards per route run and the best targets per route run against zone coverage on the Seahawks. And he's run the most routes against zone coverage as well. So not only does he have the best per route numbers, he's also run the most routes against zone coverage. And as my dog says hi again, but it just makes sense when you think about it. Like, they're a very blitz heavy team. They get a lot of pressure. So what do you do when you're getting pressured? You dump it off to the slot receiver, which is why Keenan Allen had a lot of success against them, which is why I'm expecting JSN to have a lot of success against them. Hi, Jojo. That's our second play. Our third one, we're heading to the Bucks versus Cowboys game, and we're taking Mike Evans, 80 plus receiving yards, plus 155 odds at bet 365. Now, similar to the Trey McBride play, I will admit this one is a little bit also based on a narrative. It's a narrative that Mike Evans is going to get hyper targeted as the Bucks are really, and Baker Mayfield are really trying to continue his streak of getting 1,000 plus receiving yards to start a career. Like, he's never missed 1,000 receiving yards in his entire career. And again, I wouldn't just be on it just based off of that, but it's also a good matchup against the Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys defense has been better as they've gotten healthier over the course of the season, but they're really not a good passing defense by any means. And despite the fact that the Panthers had a down week last week, I'm not scared off of this Cowboys passing defense at all. Trayvon Diggs is out for this game. And what I like about Mike Evans is they move him around the formation. Like, he lines up 45% of the time on the left. That's the majority of the time for him. 31% of the time in the slot, 24% on the right. So they line him up majority on the left, but they switch him up. It's not just like what we see with Cliff Kingsbury, which is just you're the left receiver and you're the right receiver. That's not the case with the Bucks. But him lining up on the left side is on the majority of the time is important, because it means he's going to be lined up with the Cowboys' left cornerback, who's also their worst cornerback. Also means they're going to Mike Evans will mostly avoid Deron Bland, who is a good cornerback. You know, he can give up big plays, but he also makes big plays. And the Cowboys' passing defense is not something that we want to be scared of. They've allowed the 6th most receiving yards specifically to wide receivers. They allow the 3rd most yards per route run, 3rd highest yards per target, 5th highest yards per reception. Normally, like I said, with the JSN one, I don't like to bet off of guys after outlier performances, but Evans is really starting to come on recently, hitting this number in 2 of his last 3 games, actually hitting 100 receiving yards in both of those games as well, double-digit targets in both of those games. I just think he's going to get hyper-targeted in this one, so I absolutely love backing Mike Evans in this game to get us to 80-plus receiving yards. That's play number 3. Now we're starting to climb some ladders. Play number 4, ladder climb number 1, is in the Lions versus Bears game. It's a Jahmyr Gibbs rushing yards ladder. I'm putting a full unit on 90-plus rushing yards, 3/4 of a unit on 100-plus rushing yards. Now, this is as square as it gets. Everybody's going to be on Jahmyr Gibbs rushing yards. Honestly, I don't care. David Montgomery went down. Everybody knows that. Aside from the Panthers, the Bears' rush defense is about the second best matchup in the entire NFL for rushing props, with the Panthers at number 1. The Bears' run defense, just a total abomination. I mean, we targeted Aaron Jones last week against the Bears. We had him for 70-plus and 80-plus. He hit both of those numbers. His over-under was 66.5. He ran for 80 yards, 20 yards, or 86 yards, 20 over what his prop was set at. Would not be a surprise to see Jahmyr Gibbs do the exact same thing, just annihilate his rushing total. Now, he's not going to get all of the carries that Monty is vacating, right? Like, he's not going to get 30-plus carries. Of course not. But his attempts are going to go up. He averages about 13 per game, 13 rush attempts per game. He averages 6 yards per attempt, so that's probably going to come down. It's probably going to be like 5.5 yards per carry as opposed to over 6 yards per carry. He's also probably going to get like 18 to 20 carries in this one as well. So even if he averages like 5 yards per carry, that gets us to the 90 yards if on 18 carries, and 20 carries would get us to the 100 play to catch out the full ladder. We all know how good of a running team the Lions are. Second best rush grade in the NFL according to fantasy points, and the matchup again, is as good as it gets. The Bears, terrible, terrible run defense. They've allowed the second most rushing yards per game, only behind the Panthers. They've allowed 115 rushing yards per game on the season. Since week 9, they've allowed 130 rushing yards per game. And as their offense is just incapable of doing anything, teams are running more and more against the Bears. Like since week 7, the Bears have the third worst stuff rate in the NFL, the second worst adjusted yards before contact per attempt in the NFL. Jahmyr Gibbs is going off against this Bears abomination of a run defense. That's play number 4. Play number 5, and this is going to be another ladder play. So we're taking James Conner 90-plus rushing yards for a full unit McSlam, and then we're putting a half unit on James Conner to get to 100-plus rushing yards for a half unit. I call those a mini slam. I mean, another situation that people could probably guess, another situation where we're not fading recent results, but I just talked about how bad the Panthers' run defense is. They are as good of a matchup as you can possibly imagine for running back rushing props. I mentioned this earlier, but they have the worst run defense according to DVOA. That's not a surprise. They've allowed the most rushing yards per game by a country mile. And any time frame you want to look at, Panthers are the worst rushing defense since week 1, since week 4, since week 8, whatever. Terrible run defense. On the entire season, they've allowed the most rushing yards per game, as I mentioned, about 140 per game, which is terrible. The Bears, who I mentioned allow the second most rushing yards per game, allow 115. The Panthers are at 140. Since week 10, the Panthers have allowed 157 rushing yards per game, which is just insane. All their advanced metrics obviously show a horrific run defense. They have the worst stuff rate in the NFL. They allow the 5th most yards after contact per attempt in the NFL, the 3rd most adjusted yards before contact per attempt. Allowing 5th most after contact, 3rd most before contact is disgusting, meaning they're allowing runners to get far before being contacted, and they're also not doing a good job at bringing them down when contacted. Just going through their game log of running back rushing yards against the Panthers, it's just a comedy, right? It's a comedy movie. It's Anchorman. It's Wedding Crashers. Last week, Rico Dowdle, 149 yards against them on the ground. Week before that was Saquon Barkley, who had 124. His over-under was 110, and he still went over. The week before that, Bucky Irving had 152 rushing yards against the Panthers. And in that same game, Rachaad White had 72. I could go on, but you get the point. Horrible run defense. Looking at James Conner, there was a rough stretch where he missed even the main line, did not get to 90-plus in 3 straight weeks. He's been better recently, cashed this out, at least 90-plus in 2 straight games, and he went over 100 and last week. So instead of fading recent results, I wanted to ride the flames with this one, as I think he's going to get the ball a zillion times. Both backup running backs for the Cardinals are hurt, and the Cardinals are going to need to win to possibly win their division. Like, they're still trying. They're going to give the ball to James Conner a ton. He's going to get 20-plus carries. I find it hard to believe he's not going to get 100-plus rushing yards to cash out our ladder play. That's play number 5, our 6th and final pick of the video, and our last ladder climb. It's a Cooper Kupp receiving yards ladder. I'm taking him 70-plus receiving yards for the full unit McSlam, 80-plus receiving yards for a half unit. Now, this is a classic Matt play. People who are used to my channel are used to these types of plays. I'm going to go ahead and call this our Pepto play of the day. It feels incredibly gross. It's going to feel icky. Your stomach's going to feel queasy. Taking a Cooper Kupp receiving prop after last week where he complete goosed, literally 0 receptions for 0 yards last week. Now, Puka Nacua did go off in that game, and he's inevitable. He's Thanos. He's inevitable. But passing in that game last week for the Rams was down across the board. Just look at the game, the box score between that game, 49ers and the Rams last Thursday, was disgusting. After that goose, the guess here is that they're going to make it a point to target Cooper Kupp early and to target him often. If you could take 1+ reception on the first drive, 2+ receptions on the first drive. I kind of think that's a good look for Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua has been incredible this season. So this is not me telling you that I think Puka is going to have a down game. I think Puka could also blow up in this game, but I really think it's going to be a Cooper Kupp game as well. And even though it feels gross, Cooper Kupp hasn't been terrible with Puka Nacua in the lineup. Now, we're going to take out 2 games, which only help Cooper Kupp. So I'm doing this to be as honest as possible. We're taking out the game in which Puka got hurt, which was week 1, and we're also taking out the game in which Puka Nacua got ejected because he barely played in both of those games. Now, Cooper Kupp had 100+ yards in both those games, but again, they don't really count because Puka didn't play, but they would only help my point if I included them. So I'm being honest. But so we're looking at 7 games where Puka Nacua has played the majority of the snaps. Kupp has hit the full ladder climb of 80-plus yards in 3 of those 7 games. That's not amazing. Yeah, he's done it in less than half, 3 of 7. That's not terrible either. And after the goose last week, the guess is that things are going to swing back the other way for Cooper Kupp. And this Jets passing defense has just been atrocious recently. They fired Robert Saleh, and since week 10, they have been terrible. They've allowed the 5th most passing yards per game since week 10, the 4th most yards per route run, 8th most yards per target. And just looking at the box score against them, multiple times over the last month, they've allowed multiple wide receivers to go off. Last week, against a pitiful Jags passing offense, all 3 wide receivers on the Jaguars hit their receiving prop over. The week before that, both Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill hit their receiving prop over against the Jets. Hill had over 100 yards. Waddle almost had 100 yards. The week before that, it was both DK Metcalf and Jaxon Smith-Njigba who went over their receiving prop against the Jets. So, Nakua's over-under is going to be in the 90s. He's probably going to cash that. But I also think it's going to be Cooper Kupp who's going to cash his prop as well. And I really like this one. Pepto play. Take a shot of Pepto when you press submit on this bet, but I absolutely love it. That rounds out everything for NFL Sunday. All 6 of my bets for you guys to lock in, including some juicy ladder climbs as well. I appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe. Make sure to check out the links in the description of the video if you want to support the channel. Again, I appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.